A Gift for You, a horror story made by Clara Fernandes. With a loud gasp, small Claire Clark awoke that night with cold sweat trickling down her forehead, her heart pounding a million beats per second. Hastily, she jumped out of her bed and dashed towards the narrow window situated in the corner of her bedroom, to make sure she was indeed home. Breathless, the girl placed her wet palms against the cold glass and cautiously observed the familiar view of the outside. The identical blue suburban houses stood peacefully, a line next to one another, their tiny gardens and white picket fences still covered in blankets of white. "See, Claire, you have nothing to worry about. It was just a nightmare," she mumbled to herself. Regaining her breath, the 7-year-old climbed into bed and tried to sleep once more. For what seemed to be hours, the child twisted and turned, uncertain as to whether it was safe to doze off. Visions of that strange, tall man holding a pot of wax, with his piercing blue eyes and sharp, pointy teeth, were still engraved in her mind. The girl knew that it had been just fruit of her imagination, and that nothing like that would ever happen in the peaceful, gated community of Sunny Park, Indiana. But that did not cease the uneasy tingle that still roamed her back. Just as the petite girl heard the old grandfather's clock bell ring for the 3rd time, she decided that she had had enough and left the safety of her bed for what she did not know would be the last time. The child walked down the stairs as quietly as a mouse and waltzed into the living room. The parlor looked just like it did a couple of hours ago. The faint smell of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes still roamed the air. The fire was still ignited, its light shining peculiarly upon the tiny Santa ornaments in the Christmas tree. The only difference was that she was now utterly alone in the dead silence of that frigid night. Suddenly, she heard a soft rumble come from her stomach. Until then, Claire had not noticed how ravenous she had been. The girl eyed the room, trying to find something that she could devour. The only thing she encountered was a pile of gingerbread cookies and milk that had been left for Santa. The small girl knew that it was wrong to take away the snack that had been left for the old man. However, almost magically, the scent of the cinnamon cookie took up all the space inside her nostrils, and in mere seconds her lips were already touching the soft surface of the cookie. She languidly closed her eyes to savor the biscuit properly. The taste that fluttered her mouth was sweet, just like a fading dream. Claire was enjoying herself until all of a sudden, the luscious flavor which had once filled her mouth was replaced with a bitter one. Still with her eyes closed, she spat the cookie rapidly, trying to take that nightmarish taste off her mouth. After finally opening her eyes, she found her living room completely different. The bright and warm fire that had once lit the room was now long gone, and the front door was wide open, letting frigid breeze spread around the house. Claire hastily bolted towards the door before the wind could sweep her off her feet. The child was inches from the doorknob when she started hearing it, the distant sound of bells. With every second that passed, the louder the noise became. She could not spot where it was coming from until a large figure popped up in the corner of the street. It was wearing all red and carried a bag that could presumably fit anything from a large toy to a small child. "Santa," she whispered to herself as she ran towards the man who now stood inches from her white picket fence. "Merry Christmas," the tall man said as he waved his hands from side to side. As he moved his hands, Claire could not help but notice a yellowish sparkle that came from the tips of his fingers. It reminded her vaguely of wax. "Santa, you're here!" she beamed with excitement. "It's such a pleasure to meet you." "It's my pleasure, Claire. Who wouldn't want to meet such a pretty little girl like you?" he said as his piercing blue eyes cautiously examined her torso. It must be admitted, she felt a tad uncomfortable. The way that he stared brought back the pernicious tingle in her spine. Trying to break the tension, the small girl asked, "What's inside that big bag of yours?" All of a sudden, an enormous smile spread across the old man's face, showing his pearly white pointy teeth. "Well, it's a present I got specially for you," he said, trying to hide his sudden burst of enthusiasm. "Wow," the girl smiled. "That's awfully kind of you." "Awfully kind indeed," he said, almost in an ironic tone. "Well, what is it?" the child asked curiously. "Ah, you need to come closer to see it," he said, almost in a mysterious voice. She took a step closer to the bag. No, dear, I mean very close, as if we were going to enter so that you can examine it better," he demanded, almost out of character. The girl continued approaching the bag, excited to see what was inside. Slowly, the tall man opened the chrisman bag. Small girl put her head inside so that she could take a proper look as to what her fancy new gift would be. And just like that, she felt a strong force pushing her spine and stuffing her in the bag with no mercy. He shoved her so far in that all she could hear from the outside was muffled laughter. This time, there was no waking up.